Hello and a very warm welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for clicking on the video. This one is all about the Chicago Marathon. It's quite a short video. I've got 11 really important tips to share with you over about 22 minutes. Let's get into it. But just before we get into it, I just wanted to wish you very, very good luck. It's only 2 weeks today that we'll be running the Chicago Marathon. I'm here in Berlin, just picking up my bib for the Berlin Marathon, so this is kind of effectively my last long run, and then I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Chicago. If you see me, say hello, and yeah, very, very good luck. See you soon. Take care. Bye for now. So tip one is nothing new on race day. I'm sure you've heard this many, many times before. That includes hydration and nutrition, which we'll come on to in other tips. But don't drink anything new, don't eat anything new, not only on the day before the race and certainly not on race day, but also 3 or 4 days out from the race, because you never know how that might come back to haunt you. So nothing new on race day. And of course, your kit is very much part of that. So don't wear any new clothes at all. So use what you've been using in training. Your t-shirt, your shorts, your underwear, socks, trainers, shoes, whatever you choose to wear, your hydration belt, your hat. Anything that you're wearing has to be stuff that you've already used and worn before, so it stops the chafing or any discomfort. Whatever you do, don't use new trainers or even new t-shirt on the day. You might find that starts to chafe in places you don't want it to chafe. So tip number 2 is all about hydration. Make sure you're well hydrated. I tend to drink at least 2 liters a day. For my size, I'm about 80 kilos. So for me, 2.5 liters a day with some electrolytes. I tend to use Cis tabs, which are very good. And I just drink throughout the day. So you're well hydrated days before the marathon, not just one day before the marathon. So you're carrying that extra water. That'll really help you on miles sort of 15, 20, 25 plus. So keep well hydrated. How do you know? Well, you need to be urinating, as it were, probably every 90 minutes to 2 hours when you're drinking enough. And if you look, your urine should be sort of a pale straw color. So not yellow and certainly not orange, but a pale straw color. That means you're well hydrated and you're hydrated enough to be running the marathon. Of course, the night before and the morning of, keep that hydration level up, keep the electrolytes going, whatever electrolytes you use, and that will really help you in the later miles of the marathon. Tip number 3 is all about nutrition. Now, you should be eating well on the weeks up to the marathon, sort of whole foods, nutritious foods, wholemeal foods, that kind of stuff. When it comes to 3 or 4 days out, yes, you'll heard the expression carb loading. So start to carb load 3 or 4 days out. I'm not a fan, repeat, not a fan of people carb loading the night before. For me, that's too little too late. Your body feels lethargic. You're going to feel a little bit stuffed, as it were, the next morning. And in terms of bowel movements, if you eat too late on the Saturday night, you may have issues the next morning, which is Sunday morning, race morning. So start to carb load a few days out. 3 or 4 days out, you are able to kind of cheat and have, simple carbs, white bread, croissants, that kind of stuff, pasta, white rice, etc., as opposed to nutritious carbs and more complex carbs a few weeks earlier, which might be sweet potatoes, brown rice, wholemeal bread, that kind of stuff. Avoid that because it has a lot of fiber in it. The week before the marathon, use your simple carbs, white breads, croissants, white pasta, white rice, that kind of stuff, which is actually quite nice for a change, and it feels like you're cheating, but actually those those simple carbs are really helpful in terms of building up your carb levels. So that's your nutrition. Don't eat anything new on the plane, in the hotel, and certainly not at the Expo, which is, a day or 2 before the race itself. So that's nutrition. Keep your carb levels up. The last meal on Saturday for me is no later than 3 or 4 p.m. So I have a decent breakfast, a light lunch, and a much lighter dinner because I've already pre-carb loaded 3 or 4 days out. Tip 4, study the map. You can see it above me there. That's the one I got last year in red above there. Now the map is really interesting and absolutely critical for you to have a look at. Why? There are 20 turns on the Chicago Marathon. There are 20 aid stations on the Chicago Marathon. There are 6 bridges. So lots to take in as far as the course and the map is concerned. What I would say this year is each aid station has definitely got water and Gatorade. I think the flavor is lemon and lime, not very nice, but it's Gatorade, which obviously is a sports drink. But more importantly this year, they don't have any Gatorade gels. This is 2024 in case you're watching it later than 2024. This year, thankfully, they've got Marathon gels, which I'm a big fan of. So they'll be using my preferred gel. So that's Marathon. There's the caffeinated version, which I'm very happy about. If you're not used to Marathon gels, then avoid them because, again, it's something new on race day. If you do use Marathon, then the good news is they're at mile 13, 18, and 24. In kilometers, that's 21, 29, and 37. So Marathon gels will be there, which I'm really pleased about. So the 6 bridges I mentioned, remember that they are metal grids on the bridges. So if it's raining or wet or cold and slippery, try and run on the carpet. There's a red carpet. Most of the runners will head that way. If you're forced onto the metal grid, just be careful. Tip number 5, the exhibition, the Expo itself. It is a huge exhibition center at McCormick Place. It really is quite substantial. You'll easily clock up 10,000 footsteps that day, possibly a lot more depending on what your plans are. But again, nothing new on race day. You will be given, it's one of the best exhibitions I go to. I've done the 4 majors, New York, London, Berlin. Chicago is one of my favorites. You get lots of freebies and it's very tempting to eat and drink something new. I try and just stuff everything into the bag and have it after the race. So nothing new on race day, but the McCormick Place Exhibition Center is huge. It opens up at 11 a.m. on the Thursday till 6 and then 9 till 6 from Friday and Saturday. No pickup, no bib pickup on the Sunday, so don't get caught out with that. You have to pick up the bib yourself personally. Remember when you go to have some sort of passport or government ID with your picture, and also the QR code that will be emailed to you on the 2nd of October this year, 2024. So if you're watching this a little bit earlier, you will not have received that email yet. It's going to be sent out on the 2nd of October. When you get that email, make sure you put it on your phone, and it's a QR code. That and your passport will help you get your bib. Also, when you get your bib, of course, the chip will be part of the bib. You can see it's there. The chip is on the other side. You'll get your t-shirt, and of course, you'll get your drop-off bag, which you can then take to the start of the race. So remember, McCormick Place, it's huge. We'll get on to transport in a minute, but make sure you know how to get there and how long it's going to take you to get there and back to your hotel. It's not the most conveniently placed location, and it will take you a little while to get there and back, and it'll be very, very busy. So try and get there early. So tip number 6 is all about the start line. And the first thing I would say about the start line is know where it is. Wherever you're staying in Chicago, do a kind of a recce, a reconnaissance the day before, a couple of days before. Get there physically. Use the same sort of transport. If you're going on the bicycle, or if you're taking an Uber or a taxi, or walking if you're close enough on the Magnificent Mile or in the Loop somewhere, get there to the start line. So physically, you've already been there. Why? That simply gives you peace of mind and reduces the stress levels on the morning of. Now, they also suggest that you be there 2 hours before your race start time. Now, for me, I'm in one of the early corrals. I'll be starting at 7:30 in the morning. So I have to be there at the start line at 5:30 a.m. Now, one thing I'd recommend is if you're in one of the early starts, I didn't know this last year, is take a torch because it's pitch black when you arrive. Now, you don't have to take a decent torch. You can always put them throw them away in one of the wheelie bins. If it's a decent torch, put it in your drop bag and pick it up later. But it really is, I was quite surprised, especially when you get to the back of the fountain, Buckingham Fountain. It's actually very dark around there, so you can't really see. And the last thing you want to be doing is tripping over before the race. So get there early, 2 hours is recommended before your start time. So that's Grant Park, just off Michigan Avenue. You will have a security stroke gear check. And what I mean by gear check is you are going to go through a security very similar to an airport style. You're not allowed to have any hydration packs at all. They're simply not allowed since the Boston bombings. You are allowed a belt, which is fantastic. You can use your belt. And if you're taking water, they may very well ask you to empty the water. If you're taking some kind of water or hydration, just make sure it's empty. If you're using some kind of hydration powder or mix, put the powder in the bottle, but leave the bottle empty. There are lots and lots of water fountains in Grant Park where you can retrofill your bottle. So that's the start. When you get to the start, there are loads and loads of portaloos. Out of all the majors, I think it's the one that's best serviced by lots of toilets, portaloos, porta potties, whatever you want to call them. So lots there, but nevertheless, with almost 50,000 runners, it still gets busy. So get to the portaloos early. If you've got nothing else to do, once you've been to the loo, get to the back of the queue and start again. Also, what I would say is walk further down from your start corral. You'll often find much shorter queues at the porta potties. All right. Now, when it comes to your start time for your corral, they recommend you arrive at least 20 minutes to 30 minutes early for your start corral. I think 20 minutes is enough, but they do close the gates. Remember, there are no portaloos in the start corral, so make sure you've been to the loo before you do that. If for whatever reason you miss your start corral, don't panic, because you can still go to a later corral and start. You can't go to a faster one, but you can go to a slower one. As far as the race is concerned, as far as the start is concerned, those are probably the big tips. Arrive early, remember your security check, remember your bag drop, get that done in plenty of time to make sure you're at your start corral at least 20 minutes early. So tip number 7, the race itself. All I would say about the race, it's your race, so it's your pace. Don't go hurtling off into the distance. You're going to burn all your matches and you'll have no energy left for the latter stages of the marathon. It is 42.2k, respect the distance. There are paces and there will be paces in your particular corral. If you're going for a 4-hour 30 marathon, check around you. There'll be paces there with the flags at 4 hours 30. So stay with them and that should keep you on track. One thing I've heard about Chicago is the high rises that your watch may not track because of the poor signal. I didn't experience that myself, but it's something to be aware of. So the race itself, as I've already said, 20 aid stations. That's a lot of aid stations. So you'll have plenty of opportunity, roughly every 2 kilometers, just over a mile, to have water or Gatorade. Remember that there are 3 aid stations with Marathon gel, mile 13, 18, 24, or kilometer 21, 29, and 37. So if you're on Marathon gel, great. If you're not, then make sure you take your own nutrition, whatever that might be. 20 aid stations, 20 turns or corners, if you like. So not terrible, but be aware of those corners in case it's slippery or wet. 6 bridges. Same principles. Be careful if they're slippery or wet. Try and stick to the carpet. I think it's a red carpet. When you start, as I said, make sure your bib is visible so the chip timer picks up your chip time. If you cover it with a jacket or something warm through the start line, you won't. The timer won't pick up your chip timer. So that's the race itself. A couple of other things. If you've got, GI issues or you think you might have, make sure you take some Imodium with you, some electrolytes or sodium tabs, as I've got here. I've also taken sometimes wet wipes or dry wipes of some description, tissues. Again, if you've got GI issues, there are toilets and porta potties, portaloos at the end of each aid station. So that's great, but they won't always have loo roll or tissue in them. So just take your own if you think you're going to have issues. If you don't need them, throw them into one of the wheelie bins and that'll be taken care of. Remember also at about mile 21.5, that's roughly 33 kilometers, there is a biofreeze station, which is fantastic. It's like a pit lane. You go off the main route and they will just spray wherever you ask them to spray. I didn't do it last year. I wish I had, because I did cramp up. This stuff is fantastic. I've been using it since. It really does work. So that's it. The race itself, remember, your race, your pace, 28 stations, 20 corners, 6 bridges. Make sure you've got your hydration and nutrition dialed in, and you're going to have a great time. Tip number 8, I thought I'd just throw this one in because it's quite interesting that, some people navigate Chicago quite well, others don't. The CTA, I found it reasonably easy to use. There is a Ventra, V-E-N-T-R-A, Ventra ticket. I think it's about $7, and that's unlimited use throughout the day, which is great if you're coming in from the outside of Chicago. The loop on the interior means that you can travel endlessly all day for, I think it was $7 from memory. So that's an option. What I also used the majority of the time was the Divvy bikes. Again, there's a daily rate, but you can literally pull one out of the bike rack, go wherever you want to go and put it back into the bike rack. And you can do that as many times as you want. Divvy bikes, really useful. Cabs and Uber tend to have dynamic pricing because of the enormous amount of people in Chicago on the race weekend. That dynamic pricing means it will get very expensive unless you choose to share with somebody, in which case you need to organize that. So that's transport, tip number 8. Tip number 9 is check the weather. Now, we can't change the weather, we're all aware of that, but what it does do is if you have some kind of strategy in mind, whether it's hydration or nutrition, and it's particularly warm, because Chicago can fluctuate from very cold, 0, minus temperatures, right up to, pretty warm, sort of mid to late teens. In the US, that might be sort of 60s and 70s Fahrenheit. So there is a difference, and it does affect how you run. So you will know when it's hot or warm. It will slow you down, your heart rate goes up. So think about the weather and adjust your strategy accordingly. Now, if it's very wet and windy and cold, obviously get a couple of extra layers, or at least one extra layer for the start line. My big tip on there is to get a charity sweater or pullover, and then you can throw it in one of the charity bins when you start. The other one is to have bin liners, which are basically those black plastic bags that you get for trash cans. Wear 2 of those. Between them, there's a layer of air which is quite insulating. The plastic bags themselves can be used to sit on. Lots of uses for plastic bags. And then, of course, you can throw them away when you don't want them. So the weather is important, but more important than what it's going to be like on the day, it's a mindset thing. There are no surprises the next morning. If you know it's going to be 0 degrees and cold, there's no surprises, there's no shock the next day. If you know it's going to be particularly warm, then you can adjust your strategy accordingly. All right, so that's the weather. Check the weather, dress, and use your strategy accordingly. Tip number 10 is mile 27. Don't worry, there isn't a mile 27 on the marathon, but what it is they label it mile 27, and that's essentially a family party after the marathon. It's in Butler Field, which is just beyond the finish line. You can use your token to get your free beer. The beer, by the way, is this one here. You'll get it. It's sponsored by Goose Island Beer. This one's specifically created for the Chicago Marathon. And it's a bit of a party atmosphere. This DJ, there's a stage with a live band and lots of different stalls where you can get food and chat to people with all kinds of running related stuff. That's the party after the marathon, immediately after the marathon. It goes on till about 4 p.m. Beyond that, there are 5 restaurants, which I'll flash on the screen now, which are sponsoring the marathon. You probably need to pre-book to get into one of those 5 restaurants. There will be loads of runners and people involved in the marathon at those 5 restaurants. So if you want to go to one of those restaurants, pre-book it and get involved with that. So tip number 11 is the finish line. So as you approach a finish line, you will see lots of photographers up on the gantry and towards the right. Finish strong if you can. Enjoy the last few kilometers, few hundred meters. As you come up that last hill, it's not a big hill to worry about. I'm sure you've heard about it before. You do a right up onto the hill, which is about 100, 200 meters long, then left into the finish line, and just smile because you'll see lots of photographers. The photographers, by the way, are taking lots of pictures. If you bought the photo pack and then just suddenly realize that you're on camera, don't worry. Wave your arms, cheer, smile, whatever you want to do. You can hear them as you go past. They're taking multiple pictures. So, even if you miss them initially, they will catch you with a smile and your arms waving, and you can just discard the ones where you're not if you're scowling and looking horrible. But the finish line's great. As you finish, they will usher you through the finish line. Try and take some pictures at the finish line. They will try and push you through because there's lots of runners coming in behind you. You will get your sort of foil to keep you warm. You just wrap that around you. Don't forget to go beyond the finish line and collect your bag, which have had all the goodies that you've pre-packed for after the race. Maybe you want to put some more comfortable sliders, a change of clothes, your own nutrition, whatever you want. But beyond the finish line, you also get your medal, which is not to be forgotten, of course, is your medal. And then you'll get your beer, and you'll get your goodie bag full of protein bars, muscle milk, and a few other bits and pieces. The finish line at Chicago is great. It's long, it's wide, and it's spacious, and you get lots and lots of goodies. So enjoy that moment. It's really quite special. That's the end of the Chicago Marathon. You'll get lots of goodies. Enjoy. And here's your bonus tip, last but certainly not least. If it's a wet marathon or it's raining or it's humid and damp, one of the tips I was given some time ago was to use Vaseline. Now Vaseline, here's one I picked up in Spain, a slightly different look, but Vaseline is fantastic. I was told on a very wet morning, it was the London Marathon 23, it was pouring down with rain, is to just take your socks off, smother your feet in Vaseline, and then put your socks over your feet. And in the dry, not a problem, and it doesn't affect you anyway. But in the wet, what it does is it's got that protective layer, and it stops the rubbing. And when it stops the rubbing, you're very unlikely to get blisters or any hot spots. It certainly worked for me over the last 12 or 13 marathons. I've never, fingers crossed, had a blister, which is fantastic. Really good advice. And on that point with your foot care, I don't know if you can see that, there's some little clippers there. Trim your nails. Trim your toenails, because if they're too long, you might have problems with them sticking in or around about your trainer or your shoes, and they could cause blisters as well. And you don't want to be in pain during the marathon. It's a long distance. So those are those two things as far as your feet are concerned. And finally, but certainly not least, just enjoy the whole day. It's a huge experience. It is an Abbott World Major. Have fun, enjoy it, smile, high five the kids, enjoy the DJs, enjoy the music, enjoy the whole festivities. And I very much look forward to seeing you there on the day. So thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Those were my 11 tips for the Chicago Marathon. If you've got any tips of your own, please share them in the comment box, just simply to support and help the community. I'll be there on the 13th of October. Can't wait. If you see me, I'll be running for Young Lives versus Cancer. I'm supporting them. By all means, come and say hello, whether it's in Grant Park or the start line, or if you're in the corral that I'm in. So I look forward to seeing you there. Have a fantastic, successful marathon. See you soon.